Well, things are going to get worse before they get better. That is the frank warning from the New South Wales Premier.
To break it down, let's bring in New South Wales AMA President Dr Danielle McMullen. Doc, thanks for coming on the show. We were warned that the Sydney daily case numbers would increase, but 50? How essential is it that people comply with the government's orders right now?
It is so essential that people stay home and follow the orders. These numbers are just so much higher than any of us ever thought they could be at this stage in the pandemic. But the only way we'll get them down is if we all stay home and bunker down for the next week or more and get these turned around.
Yeah, Sydney-siders are anxiously awaiting today's numbers. Yesterday, as we said, 50. Are you expecting another big figure?
Yeah, look, we know that out of at least half of those people, the 50, were out and about in the community. In fact, it was more like 75%. So depending on how far spread those people were and also how many household contacts they have, because we know that most people with this Delta strain do spread it to all of their household contacts. So depending on who these people are who are positive, we may well see these numbers jump up even more. And what we really need to see is that the number of people who are positive were already in self-isolation during their infectious period. That's the number we need to keep watching.
On the show yesterday, Professor Mary Louise McLaws suggested we could still be in lockdown at the end of August. I know it's how long is a piece of string, but when do you think we'll start to see the benefits of this lockdown?
Look, it's really too soon to speculate. We do know that the numbers, though, reflect what was happening a few days ago. So the number of cases really does lag behind the restrictions a bit. So I do expect that we'll see numbers stay steady or potentially go up for another few days yet. And if we start turning the tide then we might be heading in the right direction. But it does seem unlikely that we'll be coming out of a lockdown on Friday.
Yeah. A big issue is young people are the last to get vaccinated, but we're seeing now teenagers in ICU. How alarming is this?
Look, it really is another reminder that the federal government needs to do everything they can to get more vaccines into the country as soon as we can so that we can vaccinate our younger people. I know younger people out there are crying out for a vaccine and all the messaging out there telling everyone to get vaccinated is really challenging if you're not eligible yet. But it's a really big reminder to those over 60 in particular to go see your GP as soon as possible and get a vaccine. And younger people we're doing what we can to try and encourage the government to get more in quickly.
Just quickly, how costly is waiting till day 10 to lock down been for New South Wales? Should we have locked down on day 2?
Look, we do have the best contact tracers in the country and potentially in the world, and they really were confident initially that we could get our arms around this outbreak. Delta is just such a different beast. It's moving so much quicker than any other strain has. Really what we've seen is a combination of, maybe things could have been locked down a day or so earlier, but also people need to follow these restrictions. We've seen far too much movement around the community over the past couple of weeks. It's encouraging that the past 48 hours or so people are finally getting the message. So let's stay home, everyone, and we'll get through this together.
Yeah, good advice. Doctor, thank you for your time this morning. And Premier Gladys Berejiklian is due to address the media at 11 o'clock this morning. We will bring that to you live.
Well, pharmacies are armed and ready to join the fight to vaccinate against COVID-19. You can book an appointment at your chemist tomorrow.
Let's bring in Nine's political editor, Chris Uhlmann, for the details and to debrief on the week in politics. Chris, good morning. Firstly, how will this work?
Richard and Sophie, it's been forecast for a while that pharmacies would begin to join in the end. They're hoping that by the middle of August, around about 500 will be joining in by August. At the moment, it will mostly be in regional and rural areas where we see these pharmacies opening up. And if you want to check in your area, go to findapharmacy.com.au. But it'll be a slow rollout in pharmacies. But it's a sign that the government now is a little bit more confident that the supplies that it needs are coming in, and you'll also see that in an advertising campaign that kicks off from today. And the reason, of course, they haven't been advertising that you get vaccinated because they haven't had the vaccines in order to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure plenty of people are saying about time. I mean, is this going to speed up the roll-up enough, Chris?
Well, certainly, as I just said, it's a sign that there are more vaccines on the way. Now, we were expecting around about 300 to 600,000 vaccines by the middle of July. It looks now like the government has got 1 million doses of Pfizer coming in from about next week onwards, and that will continue to ramp up. Don't forget there are also supplies of AstraZeneca as well, but they're targeted mostly to the over 60s. So now we are beginning to see things ramp up. 9 million doses administered so far. That's around about 32% of the population has one dose. Second doses, well, that's up now to around about 11%, and that should also gather pace. So, yeah, the vaccination program is really beginning to pick up pace now, but of course we can't vaccinate in front of what's going on in Sydney, unfortunately.
We have the health issue, but we also have the economic issue. There is a major concern in Sydney amongst business owners. Will the federal government increase support, do you think?
Well, Sophie, we saw them get rid last week of the asset test, if you like, for that payment, emergency payment of up to $500 a week. If this continues to drag on, I can't see how the federal government stays out of this. The New South Wales government is looking at doing more for business, and I think that the federal government will be dragged into it, particularly if we see it going beyond the end of next week. And at this stage, that looks like it's going to be likely, really, because it doesn't appear that New South Wales is going to be able to get on top of this in the space of another week.
And no JobKeeper this time around, Chris. I mean, you can just feel businesses going belly up all over the place. It's just terrible, isn't it?
No, it's catastrophic damage that will be happening to businesses at the moment, and some of them can only hang on for a few days, let alone a couple of weeks. Of course, JobKeeper was tapered out at the end of beginning of March. The Treasurer says he won't return to that kind of scheme. I think that the government may well be considering now what other kinds of assistance, though, that it can give to businesses in New South Wales, because they can't be allowed to carry on their own for weeks ahead.
There are threats of hard borders to New South Wales, possibly Victoria, in the next couple of hours. Will the federal government intervene?
It really can't save you. I mean, the thing that we've all discovered through the course of this pandemic, we've had a lesson in the Constitution. The states are extraordinarily powerful, and in the end, the states will decide whether or not their borders stay open. And you can understand why states that have managed now to get on top of this won't be wanting to see any of the virus spread across their borders. So now New South Wales essentially will become islanded inside Australia until such time as it can get on top of this. And given that the elimination strategy is now what everyone has pushed towards, that means getting case numbers down to zero and keeping them there for a couple of days until you can be certain that you're on top of this. And Lord knows how long that might take.
Thanks for your time, Chris. We appreciate it.